The price of a promise. The engine sat in the center of the workshop like a wounded animal, big enough to swallow a man's pride and spit out the bones. Pipes coiled around the block like veins, bolts glinted like cold teeth, and the smell of metal and fuel hung thick as a dare. Ethan wiped his palms on his blue overalls and lifted his head just enough to meet her eyes. Sophia stood on the other side of the engine, a navy dress hugging her like certainty. She had the kind of beauty that made other people straighten their spines and make room, the kind of beauty that had opened doors Ethan couldn't even find. Her finger was still pointed toward the engine, like a judge who'd already decided the sentence. "Fix this," she'd said loud enough for the apprentices to hear, "and I'll marry you." Was she serious? Was it a test? Was love a contract now? Something you signed with a torque wrench and sealed with a gasket? Had he misunderstood what it meant to be chosen by someone? Had she misunderstood what it meant to be loved by him? Behind Sophia, the foreman, Ms. Valdez, crossed her arms and watched in that thoughtful way of people who've lived a few lives and paid for each in cash. The apprentices in blue shop coats formed a loose ring. Some smirked. Some waited to be entertained. Some actually looked worried for Ethan. How many had seen a heart put on a workbench and told to run? Ethan took a breath that tasted of cold steel. He remembered the first time he'd seen Sophia, 12 years old, both of them, his hands dirty from fixing a neighbor's lawnmower, her hands clean and delicate around a violin bow. Did she remember that afternoon behind Street Bartholomew's, the blacktop hot enough to bend air, when she'd asked, "Do you really like engines, or do you just like making broken things feel less alone?" Had she guessed then what kind of man he'd grow up to be? He tightened his grip on the socket wrench, the tool digging into his palm like a promise. "If I fix this, will you actually choose me? If I fail, are you already gone? If I succeed, will I keep you, or will there always be another impossible thing to prove?" The engine belonged to a racing team that had money and pride and very little mercy for either. It had seized during testing after a mysterious drop in oil pressure. The data looked like a crossword puzzle written in a thunderstorm. People with expensive degrees had tried and failed. Now it sat here at the vocational institute, an offering, a humiliation, or both. "Timer starts now," one of the apprentices called, half joking, half cruel. "What do we think? 3 hours? 4? A lifetime?" Ethan didn't answer. He leaned close to the block and listened, the way a good mechanic listens, cheek almost touching metal, ear tuned to the breath of the machine. Was there a whine under the silence, a memory of motion trying to push through? Was that faint odor varnished fuel or grief? When you put your heart against a thing long enough, does it tell you what it needs, or does it only learn what you're willing to lose? He began with the obvious: oil system, pressure regulator, pump, galleries. He traced lines with the tenderness of a man remembering the shape of someone's hand in the dark. He asked the engine questions he couldn't ask Sophia. Where did you start to fail? Who told you to keep going when you should have rested? Where did the heat collect when nobody was looking? Do you have a plan? Sophia asked, her tone not mean, exactly, just distant, like a weather report. Or are you hoping it fixes itself? Machines don't fix themselves, Ethan said, and wondered, do hearts? Hours slid by. Ethan's knuckles split. His shirt clung to him. Ms. Valdez brought a pitcher of water and set it on a nearby cart without a word. Did she see herself in him? Did she remember some boy she'd supervised 20 years ago who had the same stubborn light in his eyes? Did every shop have a ghost like that, a story you told when the new kids got cocky? Sophia took a phone call, whispered, nodded, and returned to the engine with a face like a locked door. Who was on the other end? Her mother. The racing team liaison. That invisible circle of people who believed love should be a ladder you climb in heels, never a porch swing you share in ordinary weather. Ethan, she said when she hung up, how much longer? What answer could he give that would sound like hope? Until it tells me, he said. Until what tells you? The failure. She frowned. You talk about this thing like it's alive. He looked at her, then at the block. Isn't that the problem? She flinched. What's that supposed to mean? Every time I try to love you more than my work, he said softly, someone reminds you I'm just the work. Her gaze hardened. Don't do that. Don't turn this into a sob story. Is it a sob story if the tears don't fall? Is it manipulation to name what's true? Is the poor man always performing, even when he's simply breathing? He went back to the pump, stripped it, measured tolerances, polished a scoring that shouldn't have been possible under normal load. Why had the check valve stuck? What micro-contaminant could float past 2 filters and lodge exactly there? When did bad luck stop being chance and start being design? He found glitter in the oil, tiny as lies, bright as danger. Bearing material, cam ware. He opened the sump and stared as the sludge gave up its secrets like a riverbed disturbed by a flood. There it was, a torno ring where the pressure relief should have sealed. It wasn't age, it wasn't stress, it was wrong from the moment someone called it right. Who'd installed it? Who'd signed off? Who'd decided the schedule mattered more than the truth? He swapped the O-ring, checked the clearances again, flushed the galleries, primed the pump. The apprentices drifted closer. Did they believe in him now? Did belief arrive only when victory looked likely, and if so, what was it worth? Ready to test, Ms. Valdez asked. Almost, Ethan said. One more thing. He looked again at the relief valve seat and noticed a hairline burr, a tiny sharpness no one would see unless they expected it to be there. He smoothed it carefully, the way you smooth a sentence you can't bear to be misunderstood. Then he nodded. They rigged the engine to the stand, connected fuel and spark, and backed away a fraction. Ethan glanced at Sophia. Her eyes were bright, but with what? Fear, triumph, hunger, love. When you've waited too long for something, do you stop recognizing it when it finally arrives? He hit the starter. The engine coughed, caught, roared, a sound that filled the workshop, that rattled tools and sternums and old regrets. Gauges sprang to attention. Oil pressure climbed steady, not spiking, not sagging. Temperature rose like a tide with someplace gentle to be. There was music in it, a note that engineers pretended not to hear. Pressure holding, Ms. Valdez said, eyes on the screen. No cavitation, no chatter. That's clean. The apprentices cheered. Someone slapped Ethan's back. Someone else said, "Dude, you did it." Another asked, "Are we invited to the wedding?" Laughter rose and clanged off the rafters. Sophia didn't laugh. She stared at Ethan as if he had reached into the world and rearranged its spine. Was that awe? Was it fear? Was it the realization that she had never asked whether he wanted to marry on those terms, only whether he could? He shut the engine down. Silence fell, heavy as consequence. Oil dripped back to the pan with soft clicks, like a cooling pain. Ethan wiped his hands and walked to Sophia slowly, not like a victor but like a man leaving a battlefield still unsure which side he'd been on. "I kept my part," he said quietly. "Do you want to keep yours?" A tremor passed through her jaw. I need to think." "Think about what?" he asked. "Whether I've climbed high enough. Whether the view from where I stand is finally acceptable. Whether your friends will clap." His voice did not rise, but his words did, each finding the rung it needed. "I asked you to build a life with me. You asked me to fix a machine in front of an audience. Isn't marriage a kind of audience?" She shot back, sudden, sharp. "Don't people watch? Don't they judge? Don't they ask, what does she get out of this? What does he bring to the table?" "What do you bring?" he asked. "And what do I bring? And who gets to decide it's not enough?" He gestured at the engine. "If we start like this, where do we end?" She looked away. "You don't understand my world." He swallowed. "Do you want me to? Can you?" She whispered. "Can you stand in a room where every eye is a knife and not bleed out on the carpet? Can you stand in a room where no one's watching and still tell the truth?" He asked. "Can you love me when there's no bet to win?" Her silence was a corridor with no doors. "Will you marry me?" he asked, one last time. Without terms. Without the theater. Today if you want. Tomorrow if you need. But not like this. Not because I solved a riddle. Her lips parted, closed. "I don't know." 3 words, and the floor tilted. How long had she not known? Since breakfast. Since childhood. Was uncertainty a luxury, the velvet rope between those who could afford to hesitate and those who had to choose or be chosen for? Ethan nodded as if something his bones understood had finally reached his mind. "Okay," he said. "Then I do." "You do what?" she asked. "I do know," he said. "I know I can't be your proof. I can be your partner, your friend, your home, but not your exhibit." He thought of his mother back in their small apartment, the oxygen tank they joked about to keep from screaming, the way she'd smiled weakly that morning and said, "Go show them who you are, baby." Was this who he was? A man who could fix what other people broke and still refused to be broken in the process. Sophia's eyes glistened. "So that's it, isn't it?" he asked. "What else is there? Another trial? Another dare? Another public? If you love me, then how many times should I bow before the altar of your doubt?" She twisted the strap of her clutch. "What about everything we planned? What did we plan?" he asked. "A wedding where I earn you like a wage. A life where I audition every morning and hope I keep the part. Is that fair?" she asked. "To reduce us to that? Isn't that what you reduced us to today?" he said gently. "Ms. Valdez cleared her throat softly and stepped forward, as if to interrupt before the world tour. "You both might want to. Please," Ethan said, "just a minute more." Ms. Valdez nodded and retreated, orchestrating a quiet dispersion. The apprentices peeled away, muttering, pretending to need coffee, air, anything but the front row seat to two people learning the cost of what they thought they wanted. Ethan and Sophia stood on either side of the engine again, the way strangers stand on opposite banks of the same river, hearing the same water and drawing different conclusions about what it means to be thirsty. "Why did you make that promise?" he asked. "Why that sentence, those words? Fix this and I'll marry you. Was it to make me look big or small? Was it to test me or yourself? Was it to end the conversation without saying no?" Her shoulders sagged. "Do you really want the truth? How else do we get anywhere worth going?" She closed her eyes. "My mother said you were a risk I couldn't afford. The investors said my image mattered. The team liaison said a mechanic boyfriend would look like a conflict, and a mechanic husband would look like a mistake." She opened her eyes and met his. "I wanted you to win in a language they respect. I wanted to make them shut up. At my expense," he said. "At ours," she corrected softly. "Do you see the difference?" he asked. "Do they?" She didn't answer. How many questions can one afternoon hold? How many yeses die in the mouth before they ever see daylight? How many people trade tenderness for safety and call it maturity? A memory rose. Two kids on a bus bench, her violin case between them like a shy chaperone. She had leaned into him then and asked, "Do you ever feel like we're driving without a map?" He had laughed and said, "Maps are for people who need to explain themselves." Was the joke finally over? Had the bill for that laughter just arrived? "Ethan," she said, "what if I say I'm sorry? What if I say I want you, but I'm scared? What if I ask you to walk with me while I find the courage?" "Why did you wait to be scared until you had me cornered?" he asked. "Why didn't you say those words first instead of the other ones?" "I was stupid," she said. "I thought I could have both, the performance and the truth." "Can any of us?" he asked. "Can we be a person and a product? Can we love and still advertise?" He glanced at the engine. "Can we start clean when the oil's already full of glitter?" Her laugh broke in the middle. "I hate that you make even metaphors hurt. I hate that they have to," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, a simple silver band he'd bought with overtime shifts and small miracles. He set it on the cold engine like an offering to the god of machines. "I bought this because I thought love was a verb I could conjugate with my hands. I thought if I kept building, the house would eventually qualify as a mansion." She stared at the ring as if it had grown there like a stubborn flower. "Do you want me to take it? Do you want to take it?" he asked. "And if you do, will you still want it when the room is empty and nobody is rating your choice?" She reached, hesitated, withdrew. "I don't know." He nodded again, the way a man nods at the edge of a cliff he had hoped was a valley. "Then I'll keep it. Just for a while. Not to pressure you. To remind me that I asked for something good." He picked up his bag. Ms. Valdez gave him a quiet look that held a decade of respect in it. "You did good work," she said. "Did I?" he asked. "Or did I just make noise the world likes?" "You told the truth with a wrench," she said. "There aren't many dialects more honest." He nearly smiled. "Will it be enough? For some people," she said. "Maybe for you." He stepped toward the door. The apprentices parted like a blue sea. Outside, afternoon had started to cool into evening. He paused and turned back. "Sophia," he said, "I'll be at the old pier at 9. I'll have coffee. I'll have a silence we can share. If you want to talk, really talk, without an audience, I'll be there. If you don't come, I'll still be me. He swallowed. I need to learn how to be me either way. Her lips trembled. What if I'm late? I'll wait an hour, he said. After that, I'll go home. How long can a person ask their future to sit on a bench and behave? He left. The pier had always been a place where time untied itself and floated off like a loose balloon. The tide pressed its shoulder against the pilings, gulls heckled the water, somewhere a radio played old country songs about what you keep and what you lose. Ethan sat on a bench and watched a kid drop a line into the harbor like a prayer. Was that what he was doing here, fishing for a miracle? How many miracles could one day afford? He checked his phone. 8:56, 9:02, 9:14, 9:31. Was every minute a vote? Was patience a currency or a costume? Was he being brave or foolish or both? At 9:42, he saw her at the far end of the pier, wind pulling her hair into small storms. She walked slowly, as if each step consulted a committee. Was she here to stay? To apologize? To postpone? To practice the new art of not running away? She sat beside him, not too close, not too far. Is this where we tell the truth? She asked. Isn't everywhere, he replied. She folded her hands. I don't know how to do this without disappointing someone. Could you start? He asked, by not disappointing yourself. How? She whispered. By choosing love over safety. By choosing you over them. By choosing us over a version of me that smiles better in photographs. How did photographs become judges? He asked. How did love become a press release? She laughed once, broken and brave. Do you love me, Ethan? Does the ocean know its name? He asked back. Does fire ask permission to be warm? Does a man have to pass a test to tell his heart it's welcome? She closed her eyes. Then marry me. He stared at her. Because I fixed an engine. Or because I can't be replaced. Because you reminded me who I was before I learned how to audition, she said. Because you asked better questions than the answers have been given. Because when you left the shop, I heard the silence, and it sounded like a future I didn't want. He studied her face for the lie and found only fear, which is sometimes the most honest thing we can bring. Will you keep choosing me tomorrow when someone whispers that I'm not a brand? Will you keep choosing me when I'm tired and you're busy and the sink is full and we forgot to be impressive all week? Yes, she said, and then added, I think so, and then, more bravely, I will try every day until trying turns into knowing. Is that enough? He asked. Is trying allowed in a world that demands proof? It is in mine, she said. Can we build that world together? He took out the ring again, the metal catching pier lights like small, grateful stars. Are you sure? He asked. Are we doing this because we're ready, not because we're panicked? She smiled through tears. Isn't readiness sometimes just the decision to be kind to what is true? He slid the ring onto her finger, hands shaking. People at the far end of the pier clapped, because strangers can be saints on easy evenings. A gull screamed approval. The ocean agreed to keep breathing. They sat a long time, letting the future find a shape in the dark. He told her about the O-ring, the burr, the glitter. She told him about mothers and meetings and the way fear wears a friend's voice to get in the door. He asked if she wanted to learn his work. She asked if he wanted to learn her music. He wondered whether you could tune a marriage like an instrument. She wondered whether an engine could teach you the right way to apologize. Not loud, not lazy, just precise. Will we hurt each other? She asked. Probably, he said. Will we fix it? If we listen, she said. Will you still love me if I fail something big? He asked. Will you still love me if I succeed at the wrong thing? She asked back. Yes, he said. Yes, she echoed. They walked off the pier hand in hand, the ring cold and sure between their fingers. They passed a street musician playing a violin with a crack down its face, and Sophia paused, eyes wet. Do you think broken instruments remember what they used to sing? She asked. Don't we all? He said. 2 months later, the racing team called Ethan with an offer he should have wanted. Money, travel, a shiny jacket with his name spelled right. He stared at the contract long enough to wonder who would sign it, him or the memory of the boy who had believed being chosen would mean he could finally stop asking questions. Should I take it? He asked Sophia at their little kitchen table that smelled like garlic and rent. Will it make me proud? Will it make me lonely? Will it buy us time or spend it? What do you want that the contract can't give you? She asked. What can it give you that you don't already have? He shook his head. Why is happiness always translated into numbers? Because numbers are easy to grade, she said. But easy doesn't mean honest. He turned down the offer politely. A smaller shop hired him instead, one that fixed city trucks and school buses and ambulances that couldn't afford to fail. He came home tired and satisfied, hands smelling like stories no sponsor would clap for. Was this success? Was this surrender? Was there even a difference if your heart knew where it lived? Sophia kept playing. She took gigs that paid enough and gigs that paid in glances toward heaven. She said no to galas that wanted her to sparkle and yes to community centers that wanted her to heal. Am I wasting my talent? She sometimes asked in the dark. Or am I finally spending it? Which one feels more like music? He would reply. They married on a Tuesday in a small chapel with big light. Ms. Valdez wore a floral dress and cried once when nobody was looking. The apprentices sent a card signed in grease pencil. The street violinist from the pier played them down the aisle. Ethan whispered at the altar, as a vow, a kind of engine. And Sophia whispered back, only if we keep oil in it. People congratulated them with the usual phrases. You look so happy. Don't change. Change for the better. Are you ready for the real work? Are you ready for the real joy? Each question folded itself into the day like origami, pretty, fragile, bound to tear. Later, when the chapel was empty and the flowers had exhaled their last brave scent, Ethan and Sophia stood alone where they had promised not to measure love by performance. Are we foolish? He asked. Are we brave? She asked. Is there a difference? They asked together, and laughed. Not every day was holy. Some were noisy and ordinary and vaguely disappointing the way Tuesdays can be when your socks don't match. They argued about money, about dishes, about whose turn it was to call his mother, about whose dream took up more space in the room. They apologized. They improved. They forgot and had to remember again. When the engine of their life sputtered, they checked for the glitter of small cruelties in the oil. When they found some, they changed it together. Sometimes Sophia woke from a nightmare where she was on a stage and the audience's hands were clocks that never clapped. Am I still performing? She would whisper. Am I still asking the world to tell me who I am? Who do you want to be? He would ask. Who do you already know you are? Sometimes Ethan came home smelling like diesel and defeat and asked, will I ever be enough? And she would put his head on her lap and say, aren't we already building a life that answers that? The world didn't stop judging, but the world didn't get a vote. Isn't that the secret most people never learn? When you choose tenderness over theater, do you lose some doors and find better ones? When you stop holding auditions for your own life, do the right characters finally show up? On their first anniversary, they went back to the institute. The big shop was quieter now, or maybe time had put a hand on their shoulder and taught them to hear differently. The engine stand where Ethan had performed his near miracle stood against the wall with a new student project bolted to it, smaller, humbler, earnest. Ms. Valdez saw them and grinned. You too, she said. Did the engine hold? The engine, Ethan asked, and then understood. Yes, he said, it's holding. He squeezed Sophia's hand. We're keeping pressure. We're staying cool. Sophia touched the old stand and asked the room softly, do you see us? Do you believe we can keep being kind? The air smelled like oil and effort and second chances. They walked out into sun that didn't need an audience to shine. On the steps, Sophia asked, do you ever think about that day and wonder how close we came to losing this? Every time I look at your ring, he said. Every time I hear an engine start. Every time a question saves us from a lazy answer. Will questions always save us? She asked. Only the honest ones, he said. They headed toward the little diner where the pancakes tasted like forgiveness. On the corner, a kid wrestled with a broken skateboard, face crumpled with the stubborn grief of 15. Ethan paused. You okay, man? It won't roll straight, the kid said. I think the trucks are shot. Want a hand? Ethan asked. The kid shrugged in the universal language of yes but pretend it's no. Ethan knelt, tightened a loose kingpin, straightened a washer, spun a wheel. The board smoothed out like an apology accepted. The kid lit up. How do you know? Same way everybody knows, Ethan said. You listen till the problem confesses. When they walked away, Sophia bumped his shoulder. Was that love? Isn't it always a kind of maintenance? He asked. They laughed, and the city went on doing what cities do, forgetting some people, hurting others, blessing a few by accident. But there, in that ordinary afternoon, two people who had almost traded their home for a headline chose, again, the quieter thing. Will they falter someday? Will fear knock on the door wearing a new suit and a better sales pitch? Will there be mornings when the pressure drops and they don't notice right away? Of course. But won't they have the tools? Won't they have the questions? Won't they remember the sound an engine makes when it's lying,